I turned 72 on a Tuesday. No party, no cake, just a grocery store rotisserie chicken cooling on the counter and the soft hum of the refrigerator that never quite shuts up anymore. I woke up at 5:40 a.m. out of habit. My wife used to say I had an internal clock wired directly to regret. She's been gone 6 years now, and the clock never got the memo. The kitchen was cold. Beige linoleum, cracked near the sink. The same chip mug I've had since 2009. World's best grandpa. A lie printed in blue. I poured myself instant coffee, half a spoon like the doctor said, and sat at the small table by the window. Outside, the neighbor's sprinkler clicked on and off with military precision. Somewhere a dog barked like it still believed someone was listening. At 6:12, my phone buzzed. Incoming transfer. $3,500. Recipient, Michael R. Note, short term, I'll pay you back Friday. Friday had become a flexible concept. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, then locked the phone and set it face down. The coffee tasted like wet cardboard. I drank it anyway. Michael is my son, 46, tall, confident, always in a hurry. He works in real estate development, which mostly seems to involve flights, dinners, and emergencies that require my money to fix. His wife, Karen, calls me dad in public and him in private. The first time I sent him money was 10 years ago. $12,000. Medical bills, he said. I didn't ask which ones. The second time was $28,000. Down payment gap, just until closing. After that, it stopped feeling like an exception and started feeling like rent I paid for being allowed to exist in their lives. At 7:00 a.m., I took my pills. One for blood pressure, one for cholesterol, one that's supposed to help me sleep, but mostly just makes me tired in advance. The TV murmured in the background. Some financial channel. A smiling man explaining how leverage works. Leverage? I knew all about it. By 8:30, I was dressed. Clean shirt, frayed cuffs. Jeans I'd sewn the button back onto myself. I checked the mailbox. 2 envelopes. One from a bank. One from the airline. The airline envelope was thicker. I opened it standing up because something in my knees told me to. E-ticket confirmation. 2 seats. Business class. New York, Barcelona. Total charged. $18,940. Payment method. Linked account. My account. The note at the bottom was cheerful. We wish you a pleasant journey. I laughed. A short, dry sound that startled even me. Barcelona. I hadn't left the state in 12 years. I still flinched at airport announcements. The bank letter was less poetic. Mortgage statement. Balance remaining. $412,600. Not mine. Michael's. The one I co-signed temporarily after his second refinancing fell through. I sat back down and spread the papers on the table like evidence. The chicken smelled faintly of garlic and disappointment. I thought of my wife, how she used to line up receipts in neat little piles. How she warned me, once quietly, after Michael left the room. He doesn't ask because he needs it, she said. He asks because you don't say no. I hadn't listened. Saying no felt rude, dangerous, like breaking something you couldn't put back together. At 10:17 a.m., Karen called. Dad, hi, did you see the tickets? Isn't it exciting? For who? I asked. A pause, then a small laugh. You're funny. Michael's been under so much stress. He really deserved this. I looked at the numbers on the page. 48,000 here, 62 there. Transfers with notes like family, temporary, urgent. I'll need that money back, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. Well, let's talk about that later, she said gently. Michael's in a meeting. The line went dead. I sat there until noon. The coffee went cold. The chicken stayed untouched. For the first time in years, I didn't feel tired. I felt counted, and I didn't like the math. If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. By Wednesday, the numbers started following me around the apartment like a smell I couldn't air out. I saw them while brushing my teeth. $3, $500, $18,940, $412,600, floating between the cracks in the mirror where the silver backing had peeled. I saw them on the bus receipt, $2.75, paid in exact change like always. I saw them while standing in line at the pharmacy, listening to a woman argue about a coupon worth $6. $6 mattered to her. Six figures didn't seem to matter to my family at all. At 9:03 a.m., I logged into my online banking. I hadn't done a proper review in years. I told myself it was because the interface kept changing. The truth was simpler. I didn't want to look. The transaction list loaded slowly, like it was giving me one last chance to turn away. I scrolled. March 14, 2019, $9,800, bridge loan. July 2nd, 2020, $21,400, medical urgent. December 18th, 2021, $15,000, school deposit. August 6, 2023, $62,000, refinance buffer. Each line had a memory attached to it. A phone call, a sigh, a carefully chosen tone meant to sound grateful without sounding small. The total, when I added it up twice to make sure my eyes weren't lying, came to $387,200. That didn't include the mortgage exposure, or the tickets, or the monthly short-term transfers that never circled back. I closed the laptop and sat very still. My wife used to say silence was dangerous when it got too comfortable, that it meant something was being hidden under it. I reheated the chicken for lunch. It tasted worse than it had the day before. Cold grease, dry meat. I ate half and wrapped the rest in foil like I might come back to it later. I didn't. At 1:40 p.m., Michael called. "Dad, you got a minute?" "I've got several," I said. "Good. Listen about the money. The Barcelona money." I asked. A pause. Paper rustling. I imagined him pacing, phone pinned between shoulder and ear, glass walls, someone important walking by. "Yeah, that. Look, it's technically a business expense. Client-facing." "Which client?" I asked. "Well, not a client. It's more about optics. Relationships." "I see," I said, though I didn't. "You know how it is," he continued. "You invest a little now, you get returns later." I looked around my kitchen, at the chair with the loose screw. At the radio, I fixed myself because the repair quote was too high. At the calendar, still turned to last month because I hadn't needed anything from the future yet. "Michael," I said, "do you know how much I spend on myself in a month?" He laughed. Actually laughed. "Dad, come on." $812, I said, including rent, utilities, food, prescriptions, and the bus pass. Silence. The uncomfortable kind. The kind people fill quickly. "Why are you suddenly keeping score?" he asked. That question landed harder than the others. "I'm not," I said. "I'm checking the balance." "Dad," he said, and now his voice changed. Firmer, sharper. "You're overthinking this. You're safe. You have me." I almost told him that safety isn't the same thing as ownership. That dependence wears a friendly face right up until it doesn't. Instead, I said, "I need everything documented." "Documented?" He scoffed. "Well, you don't trust me now." I thought of my wife again, of how she labeled folders in pencil so she could erase them later if things changed. "I trust records," I said. The call ended shortly after. He had another meeting, always another meeting. That evening, Karen sent a message in the family group chat. Photos from an expensive restaurant. White tablecloths. Wine glasses like sculptures. "Couldn't have done this without you, red heart. Family is everything." I turned the phone face down. At 10:22 p.m., sleep still hadn't come. The pills never worked when I needed them to. I got up and opened the old metal filing cabinet in the hallway. The one I'd kept out of habit more than necessity. Inside were tax returns going back 15 years. Mortgage agreements. Co-signed loan papers I barely remembered signing. My handwriting got shakier the newer the documents were. On top sat an envelope I didn't recognize. Inside, a power of attorney draft, not signed, dated 2 months ago. Michael's name was already filled in. I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinet and laughed again. Quieter this time. They weren't just borrowing. They were preparing. I didn't confront anyone that night, or the next morning. Instead, I made an appointment. Not with the bank, not with my son, with a lawyer. Her office smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. She didn't interrupt while I talked. She didn't rush me. She wrote down numbers and underlined them once, slowly. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "You've been generous." "That's one word for it," I said. Another pause. Then, "Do you want to stop?" I thought about how my life had narrowed without me noticing. How every yes had made the next one easier for them to ask. Yes, I said. I want to stop. She nodded. Then the first thing we do, she said, is make sure you still own what you think you own. When I left her office, the sky was low and gray. The city smelled like rain. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar in my chest. Not anger. Clarity. The confrontation didn't happen the way I imagined it. I thought it would be loud. Voices raised. Maybe a slammed door. I even rehearsed a version where I stayed calm and they lost control. That version made me feel small and righteous at the same time. Reality, as usual, was quieter and sharper. It happened on Sunday. Michael invited me to dinner. Just family, he said. You meet Karen. No stress. I almost didn't go, but something in his tone told me this wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. I took the bus across town, then walked the last 3 blocks. Their house stood exactly as it always had. Gray stone facade, minimalist landscaping, security camera angled slightly too low, like it was watching knees instead of faces. Karen opened the door with a smile that arrived a half-second late. Dad, she said, stepping aside. You made it. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary and money. New furniture. No clutter. The kind of place where nothing lives too long because it gets replaced before it can wear out. Michael was already at the table, scrolling on his phone. Hey, he said, not looking up. Dinner was lamb. Expensive cut. Perfectly cooked. I chewed slowly, aware of how loud my fork sounded against the plate. So, Karen said, folding her napkin, we've been talking. I waited. About boundaries, she continued. Financial ones. Michael finally looked up. Dad, we feel like you're spiraling. There it was. Spiraling. I repeated. You're obsessing over numbers, he said. Lawyers. Documents. It's not healthy. I took a sip of water. The glass was heavy. Good quality. I found a power of attorney draft, I said. Dated 2 months ago. Karen froze. Michael didn't. That was just planning, he said quickly. In case something happened. Something like what? Well, you live alone. You forget things. You misplace mail. I smiled. I couldn't help it. I remembered the tickets, I said, and the mortgage, and the total you owe me, to the dollar. Michael's jaw tightened. You're acting like this is theft, he said. Isn't it? I asked. Karen jumped in then. Dad, you offered. No one forced you. That sentence, the one I'd been waiting for, settled between us like a dropped plate that didn't quite break. You're right, I said. No one forced me. Michael leaned back, relief flickering across his face. Exactly. So let's not turn this into. I enabled you, I finished. That's on me. Silence. Karen glanced at Michael. He didn't look back. I won't be sending any more money, I said. Effective immediately. Michael laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. You can't just pull the plug. I can, I said. And I have. Karen's smile disappeared. What about the mortgage? I've informed the bank I won't be covering any further payments. Michael stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. You know what this does to us, he snapped. Our credit? Our leverage? There's that word again, I said. This is retaliation, he said. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm stopping. Karen's voice dropped. You're being selfish. That one landed. Selfish. After decades of yes. After emptying accounts and signing papers I shouldn't have signed. I lived on $800 a month, I said quietly, so you could fly business class. Michael ran a hand through his hair. You're old, Dad. You don't need much. The room went very still. I need dignity, I said. Karen scoffed. Drama. Michael pointed at me. This is why we were worried. You're emotional. You don't see the bigger picture. I stood up slowly. My knees complained. I let them. The bigger picture, I said, is that you assumed I wouldn't notice when I stopped being a father and started being a line item. Michael opened his mouth, closed it. Karen crossed her arms. If you do this, she said, don't expect us to clean up the mess later. When you need help. There it was. The threat wrapped as concern. I already cleaned up enough, I said. This is yours. I walked to the door without waiting for permission. Behind me, Michael said, you'll regret this. I turned. No, I said. I regret not doing it sooner. Outside, the air felt thinner, sharper, like it had been waiting. My phone buzzed before I reached the bus stop. A message for Michael. Then another. Then Karen. I didn't read them. When I got home, I made soup from scratch. Carrots, onions, cheap chicken broth. The kind of meal that fills you without impressing anyone. At 9:14 p.m., an email arrived. Subject: immediate review required. From Bank of Northridge. I open it. The mortgage company had scheduled a meeting. Michael had called them, claimed miscommunication, claimed I was confused. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. Then I sat at the table, soup cooling in front of me, and waited. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to fix what they broke. I let it sit, and that I realized was the most expensive thing I'd ever stopped paying for. The waiting turned out to be the hardest part, not because anything dramatic happened right away. No sirens, no court summons taped to my door, but because silence, once it changes sides, becomes heavy. For years, silence had belonged to me. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. Now it belonged to them, and they didn't know how to carry it. Monday passed without a call. Tuesday, too. On Wednesday morning, my lawyer, Ms. Halvorson, left a voicemail at 8:11 a.m. They're pushing, she said, which means they're nervous. I played the message twice, then deleted it. I didn't need it sitting there, reminding me that this was real. I walked to the bank that afternoon, not because I had to, most things could be done online, but because I wanted to look someone in the eye. The branch smelled like carpet cleaner and quiet panic. A young man in a navy suit greeted me with a smile that hadn't been used much yet. Appointment, he asked. Yes, I said, regarding a co-signed mortgage. Account ending in 4421. His eyebrows rose just a little. He gestured me toward a glass office. Inside, the chair creaked when I sat. The desk was spotless. No family photos. No personality. I like that. We received a call from your son, he said carefully. He expressed concern about your capacity. I nodded. Of course he did. He mentioned memory lapses, emotional volatility. I folded my hands. Did he mention the power of attorney draft he prepared without my knowledge? The young man blinked. Typed something. Blinked again. No, he said. He did not. I'm revoking my co-signature protection, I said, and placing a note on the account that all future communication goes through my attorney. That changed the tone. He cleared his throat. That will significantly affect their loan status. I'm aware. When I stood to leave, he said, for what it's worth, sir, this happens more than you think. I smiled. That doesn't make it acceptable. Outside, the air smelled like rain and hot pavement. I walked the long way home, past the hardware store where I once worked Saturdays for cash, past the diner where my wife liked the blueberry pancakes. At home, the phone started ringing again, voicemail after voicemail. Michael's voice shifted with each one, angry, pleading, sharp, then suddenly soft. Dad, come on. You're blowing this out of proportion. Karen's really upset. We can fix this. Just call me. I didn't. Instead, I opened the filing cabinet and made copies. Every transfer, every email, every text message with phrases like just until Friday and family helps family. I labeled the folder neatly. Pencil first, then pen. Thursday night, Karen showed up. She knocked 3 times, hard. The neighbors across the hall opened their door a crack. Dad, she said loudly, we need to talk. I stepped into the hallway and closed my door behind me. Not here, I said. She lowered her voice, but not her eyes. You're humiliating us. I'm protecting myself. She laughed without humor. From what? Your own son? Yes, I said. Her face hardened. You don't understand how this looks. I do, I said. It looks like boundaries. She leaned in. Michael built his life, assuming you'd be there. So did I said. That was my mistake. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was recalculating. Then she straightened. Fine, she said. Do it your way. She turned and walked down the hall, heels striking too hard. The neighbors shut their door. That night, I slept for 6 hours straight. No pills. On Friday, the email arrived. Subject: Notice of loan reassessment. CC Michael R., Karen R., Legal Department. It was clinical, polite, brutal. The mortgage terms were being reevaluated due to withdrawal of cosigner support. Options included refinancing, liquidation, or immediate restructuring. Michael called within minutes. I let it ring, then again, then a text. Please. Just answer. I answered. Dad, he said, breathless. What did you do? Well, I should have done years ago. You blindsided us. No, I said. You assumed I wouldn't move. This could ruin us, he said. Do you understand that? Yes, I said. Do you understand that I was already ruined? Silence. Then, quietly. You're choosing money over family. I closed my eyes. No, I said. I'm choosing myself. For the first time. He hung up. That evening, I sat at my table and balanced my checkbook. The numbers looked different now. Smaller. Calmer. Mine. I cooked pasta with butter and pepper. Nothing fancy. Enough. Outside, the city moved on. Cars. Sirens. Someone laughing 2 floors down. I thought of my wife again, of how she used to say, one day, you'll have to live with the consequences of your kindness. She hadn't been wrong, but she hadn't been entirely right either. The future didn't look like something I owed anyone. It looked like something I might actually keep. The letter arrived on a Monday, printed on heavy paper that felt expensive before I even read it. Notice of default proceedings. Property address, Michael R. Scheduled hearing, April 17, 10:30 a.m. They hadn't refinanced. Of course they hadn't. Refinancing requires transparency, and they built their entire life on the assumption that someone else would absorb the risk, that someone used to be me. Michael called that night, calmer than before. Too calm. We need you there, he said. At the hearing. I'm already scheduled to attend, I said. Relief crept into his voice. Good, good. If you explain. I'll explain, I said. Yes. The courthouse smelled like dust and recycled air, old wood benches, fluorescent lights that hummed faintly, like they were tired of illuminating other people's mistakes. Karen sat on one side of the aisle, perfectly dressed. Michael paced. When he saw me, he stopped. Dad, he said, forcing a smile. Thank you for coming. I nodded and took my seat. My lawyer sat beside me, calm, unreadable. She had a thin folder. I had a thick one. When our case was called, the room shifted. Chairs creaked. A clerk cleared her throat. The bank representative spoke first. Polite, precise, numbers delivered without emotion. Then Michael's lawyer stood. My client has been unfairly destabilized, he said, gesturing vaguely toward me, due to the sudden withdrawal of familial financial support. Familial, as if blood came with an invoice. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with tired eyes, turned to me. Sir, she said, you would co-sign her? I was, I said, and you withdrew support. I reclaimed autonomy, I said. A murmur ran through the room. Michael's lawyer frowned. This decision has catastrophic consequences for my client. The judge looked at me again. Would you like to respond? I stood. My knees shook. I ignored them. I supported my son financially for over a decade, I said. I transferred a total of $387,200 directly. I co-signed a mortgage totaling $412,600. I covered expenses I was told were temporary. They were not. Karen stared straight ahead. I was not consulted when business class tickets totaling $18,940 were charged to my account. I continued. I was not informed when a power of attorney draft was prepared in my name without consent. The judge raised an eyebrow. I live on less than $900 a month, I said. They assumed I wouldn't notice, or wouldn't object. Michael shook his head. That's not fair. The judge held up a hand. Sir, she said to Michael, did you prepare a power of attorney without notifying your father? His lawyer leaned in, whispered, yes, Michael said finally, as a precaution. The judge wrote something down, slowly. And the funds, she asked. Michael hesitated. He offered. I laughed. I hadn't planned to. Offering help, I said, is not the same as surrendering your life. Silence. The judge leaned back. This court does not compel private citizens to subsidize adult children, she said. The co-signer has the right to withdraw. She turned to Michael. You will need to resolve this without him. Karen's composure cracked then. This is vindictive, she said sharply. He's punishing us. The judge looked at her. Ma'am, this is a financial hearing, not a family therapy session. That was it. No dramatic gavel. No raised voices. Just reality, stamped and dated. Outside the courthouse, Michael caught up to me. "You did this on purpose," he said. "You wanted to humiliate us." I looked at him. Really looked. "No," I said. "I wanted to survive." Karen crossed her arms. "We're going to lose the house." "That depends," I said, "on choices you make now." Michael's voice dropped. "You could fix this. One call." I shook my head. I already made the call that mattered. He stared at me like I was a stranger. "After everything," he said, "you walk away?" I thought of the kitchen table, the instant coffee, the chipped mug. "Yes," I said, "I walk away." I took the bus home, sat by the window, watched the city blur past. At home, I opened my mailbox. One envelope. Final notice, mortgage released. No further obligation. I sat down at the table and held it for a long time. That night, I cooked a proper meal. Nothing extravagant. Chicken, potatoes, real butter. I ate slowly. My phone buzzed once. A message from Michael. "We're listing the house." I didn't reply. Later, as I washed the dishes, I realized my hands weren't shaking. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like space. And space, I was learning, is where you finally hear your own voice again. The house sold in 11 days. That fact came to me the way most things did now, quietly without ceremony, through an automated email forwarded by my lawyer. No congratulations. No apology. Just numbers. Sale price: $1,140,000. Outstanding liabilities. Listed below. Net outcome: insufficient to cover full exposure. Michael called that evening. His voice sounded thinner, stretched. "They lowballed us," he said. "They bought what you priced," I replied. There was a long pause, filled with breathing and traffic noise on his end. "We're upside down," he said finally. "After penalties, fees, we still owe." I sat at my table, a slice of toast cooling beside me. "Then you still owe?" "You know what I mean," he snapped. "We owe the bank." "Yes," I said. "You do." He swallowed audibly. "Karen wants to know if you'll reconsider. Just enough to—" "No," I said. The word came easily now. Clean. Complete. "She thinks you're enjoying this," he said. I smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Tell Karen I sleep better than I have in years." The call ended without goodbye. Address by mistake, forwarded by the new tenants who were polite enough to scribble wrong person on the envelope. Collections notice. Michael's name. Karen's. I stared at it for a moment, then shredded it carefully, strip by strip. No rush. I wasn't cruel. I didn't celebrate, but I also didn't intervene. That's the part people misunderstand. They think justice has to look like fireworks, like raised voices and slammed doors. Sometimes it looks like restraint. In May, I downsized again, moved into a smaller unit closer to the park. 3rd floor, no elevator. But the stairs were wide and the light in the hallway worked. The landlord shook my hand and didn't ask about my family. I liked that. I sold the filing cabinet, gave away the extra dishes, threw out the chip mug, and bought a plain white one. It held heat better. One afternoon, I ran into Michael by accident. The grocery store near my new place carried better bread. I was comparing prices when I felt someone behind me. "Dad." I turned. He looked older, thinner around the eyes. The confidence had worn down to something sharper, more brittle. "Hi," I said. He nodded at my basket. "Bread, milk, apples." "You shopping local now?" "Yes." Karen wasn't with him. That told me more than words. "We're renting," he said suddenly. "Short term." "I see." He shifted his weight. "It didn't have to end like this." "No," I said. "It didn't." He waited. I didn't fill the silence. "You could have talked to us," he said. "I did," I said. "You just didn't hear me." His jaw clenched. "You made us look like villains." I met his eyes. "You made yourselves look entitled." That stung. I saw it land. He exhaled. "Do you miss us?" The question surprised me. "I miss who I thought you were," I said. He nodded slowly. "That's fair." We stood there, surrounded by produce and fluorescent light. 2 men who shared a last name and very little else. "I should go," he said. "Yes," I agreed. He hesitated. "If things get hard for you." "They won't," I said gently. He nodded once and walked away. At home, I made tea and sat by the window. The park across the street was loud with children. I watched a man teaching his daughter to ride a bike. He ran behind her, hands hovering, not touching. That's how it's supposed to be, I thought. Support without control. Presence without ownership. In June, I received a refund, a small one, from an old insurance overpayment I'd never noticed. $212. I laughed when I saw it. I spent it on a used radio. Fixed the tuning myself. It picked up classical stations late at night, when the air was right. In July, my birthday came again. I woke up at 5:40 a.m. The clock still hadn't learned. But this time I made real coffee. Strong. Black. I sat at the table and let it steam. No calls came. No messages. Just the hum of the refrigerator and birds outside the window. It was enough. I thought of everything I'd given. The numbers. The years. The silence I'd swallowed. And I thought of what I kept. My name. My agency. My no. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the walls gold, I turned off the radio and sat in the quiet. Not empty. Earned. Because in the end, what I learned was simple. And it cost me nearly everything to understand it. Giving until you have nothing left isn't love. Knowing when to stop, that's survival. People think the end of a story is the loudest part. They expect fireworks, apologies, a phone call at the last second where someone finally understands. That's not how it ended. It ended on an ordinary morning in early October, when the heat finally broke and the air smelled like wet leaves and metal. I woke at 5:40 again. Some habits are welded into the bones. I lay there for a moment, listening to the building settle, to someone upstairs dragging a chair, to the distant hiss of traffic. No dread, no rush. I made coffee, real coffee, not instant, and toasted bread until it was almost burnt. Butter melted into the cracks. I ate standing at the counter, watching steam crawl up the window. At 7:18 a.m., the mail slot clanged. One envelope, handwritten address. Familiar slanted letters. Michael. I didn't open it right away. I rinsed my cup. I wiped the counter. I sat down and waited until my hands were steady, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to rush whatever this was. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No letterhead. No legal language. Dad, I'm not writing to ask for anything. I know that matters now. I read slowly. They were moving again. Smaller place. Different city. Karen had taken a job that paid less, but came with health insurance. The kind of detail that would have meant nothing to me once, but now told the whole story. I'm angry, he wrote, but I'm also tired, and I think I understand something I didn't before. That line stopped me. You didn't abandon us, he continued. You stopped rescuing us. There's a difference. I see that now, even if I don't like it. No apology, not really, but something closer to truth. At the bottom, one sentence stood alone. I hope you're well. No phone number. No request to meet. No hook. I folded the letter once and put it in the drawer with my passport and birth certificate. Important things. Finished things. That afternoon, I walked to the park. The trees were already thinning, leaves skittering across the path like they were late for something. I sat on a bench and watched people pass. Couples arguing softly, joggers breathing hard, an old woman feeding pigeons with the seriousness of a profession. I realized something then. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for forgiveness. Not for gratitude. Not for the phone to ring. For decades, my life had been structured around anticipation of the next emergency, the next request, the next crisis that would prove my usefulness. I had confused necessity with love, dependence with closeness. Standing there, hands folded around nothing, I understood how small that world had been. In November, I closed the last joint account. The teller congratulated me like I'd won something. Maybe I had. In December, I spent the holidays alone by choice. No bitterness, just quiet. I made soup. I listened to the radio. I went to bed early. On Christmas morning, I took a walk before sunrise. The city was hushed, as if everyone had agreed to pause at the same time. Frost edged the grass. My breath came out white and steady. I thought of all the years I tried to earn my place in my own family, all the checks written, the form signed, the silence swallowed to keep things smooth, and I felt, finally, no urge to justify myself. In January, I updated my will, not out of spite, out of clarity. I left instructions, not explanations. If something happens to me, the paperwork will be clean. No confusion, no leverage. That mattered more than revenge ever could. Sometimes late at night, doubt still visits. It knocks softly like it used to. Was it too much? Did you go too far? I let it sit there. I don't answer, because the truth is simple and unromantic and solid enough to stand on. I have money in my account that I earned and kept. I have mornings that belong to no one else. I have a future that doesn't depend on being useful. And I have something I never had before, a boundary that held. If you had asked me once who I was, I would have said a father, a provider, a man who gives. Now, if you ask me, I'll say this. I am someone who learned late but fully that love without limits is not virtue. It's erosion. I gave until I had nothing left. Then I finally said no, and the world didn't end. It got quieter. And in that quiet, for the first time in my life, I stayed.